Hello.
Hey,
Thanks for joining.
absolutely.
It's been a while. It's
I know. Yeah, I mean, we've both been, yeah, I mean, things have been intense, like since I feel like
yeah,
I mean, I kind of like maybe saw you for like a second or two at openings since COVID, but I don't feel like we really caught up.
COVID. I feel like it's a lot of people like it changed the whole social landscape.
100%.
I mean, but also, you get older and you aren't partying as much or whatever it is, so your social life changes, which is good too. That's good. Everything has a shelf life, you know.
Right. Yeah, yeah, it's true. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and then it's just it feels like yeah, a lot of people are living differently. Like COVID really changed a lot of people. They're like, okay, wait, I've just kind of understanding of mental health, physical health, like there's just a different kind of way of existing and yeah, for me like trying to navigate the art world in a different way has also been interesting too. Like, oh, okay. How do I do it now?
It seems like you're doing all right. You're figuring it out.
Ebbs and flows. It feels like right now is like a good moment where there was a time where I was just like, maybe I'm not an artist anymore. Maybe I'm supposed to move to the jungle. I don't know. Like, but you know, I think maybe that's every artist's journey. There's a moment where you have to ask yourself, are you an artist?
It's important to have these sort of existential crises as an artist because you come back to it, and you come back stronger. And I guess I feel like I kind of had one almost as a midlife crisis when I turned 40. I gotten kind of into cooking, and like I would go home and cook for my brother and his kids and my mom, and they all loved the cooking. Oh, you should start a restaurant. You should start a food truck or something. So I was like, maybe I'll start a food truck. That's what I'll do, like a farm to table situation. And then I was given this gift where I did a shift at the co-op in Park Slope, and
Hmm.
this woman who I was working with down in the cheese or spices or whatever down in the basement, and she was like, "Yeah, I had a really successful restaurant in San Francisco. It was like a vegan pop-up vegan thing, and then ended up doing really well, got great reviews." And she's like, "But it was insane. See, you're doing just that, and it's never enough. Don't do it." And I thought about that conversation. It was really truly a gift, and I really came back more powerfully to just being an artist, and that's enough. In this life, I always knew I'd be an artist, and that's what I'm doing. So there's nothing. But I think it's important to have these moments of just reflection and really like, what am I doing here? And it changes your work too. And I appreciate the way you've utilized all these techniques, all these various. It's like you're an artist and your other things too, but all the other things add richness to your life as an artist.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly kind of what it is. Like in the end, I decided like, okay, well, I'm gonna keep stepping, keep walking in the path that's opening with these shamanic lineages. It feels like I'm being called, but at the same time, maybe my place is like more of being a bridge between these two worlds and less of like one or the other. And I kept trying to think I had to be one or the other. And that was when I was like, oh, well, what if I'm a bridge? And that felt, then all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay, then just be where you are
Yeah,
and do
yeah.
what you're called to do. And if that's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, then, I mean, there was definitely like a time when maybe I was like deeper in one or the other and that made me question, oh, am I supposed to be, you know, and but yeah.
So what's been going on?
Well, it's been kind of an interesting summer.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I mean, I you and I have kind of texted a little bit that caused our rescheduling of this podcast because I was visiting my family in my hometown of Kerrville, Texas, just a few weeks ago for the 4th of July when this like 100-year-old, I mean, 100-year flood disaster took place. And so I've kind of been in the midst of a very unusual experience and processing that. And yeah, back now in Brooklyn in my art studio. But it was the family vacation that I was not expecting, almost apocalyptic, actually. My my immediate family are all safe, and I am so, so grateful for that. We were actually kind of in a small town, several towns away from where the strongest um, kind of flash flooding took place on the in the heaviest part of the rain. And however, where we were, we lost power, we lost there was no running water, and so we evacuated that place. And it's a small lake, Inks Lake. It's near Lake Buchanan, kind of outside of Austin, kind of between, yeah, Austin and San Antonio areas, the Texas Hill Country. And so I had nowhere to go because I was there with my family. So I drove with my parents to our hometown, and it was still it was the 4th of July, and we were getting notices on our phone. It was raining really bad, but we didn't really understand exactly what was happening. And so actually we drove towards the flood because it was happening more in my town unknowingly, and arrived at home at midnight on the 4th. And then the next morning, my parents got a call from the neighbors where our lake house is, that our boat was found floating down the lake because the water had risen. However, they had caught it in time before any damage took place. And so they drove back there. And then I drove around my hometown and saw the devastation, live as it was unfolding. And um yeah, it's pretty sad. The camp, Camp Mystic, is owned by family friends, the Eastlands, and I went to high school with one of their sons, and been out there many times myself, and they were just like really beautiful people. And the husband passed away along with some daughters that were the some of my sister's friends. So we, there's grief, and there's stages of that, and then also just the shock of seeing military helicopters in this place that was really precious and dear to my heart, of being kind of like a tucked away little small town, known for its lazy emerald green river and cypress trees that are now all smashed in half. And yeah, it's just it's there's going to be a lot of time for rebuilding. And um yeah, I think just there's still a lot of shock. There's a lot of shock, but then there's also some beautiful stories of people coming to help, or heroic actions that took place that have kind of trickled in the past few weeks, that are beautiful and heartwarming. And I feel like, I like to kind of focus on those, and focus on, you know, what good um, took place in the middle of a tragedy. I
Yeah.
guess that's all we can do. Life sometimes just does things that are unimaginable, and the mind can't really wrap around it.
So you're back in the studio now.
I am.
You're settling back into Brooklyn, okay?
Yeah, yeah. Ironically, I'm working on art for an exhibition that's gonna be in Texas, in Austin, at the Austin Public Library, opening September 26th. So I already had Texas on my mind a lot, and the theme of the show involves kind of the various plants and botanical uh, beings and folklore connected to that are native to Texas. So I was already like in this field, and then now it's also giving me a whole new lens to finish the show with, in a really profound way. I've never, like, produced art from with all these emotions, in this deep way before. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you can utilize it in a creative way and use those experiences and channel them in your studio practice, and I have to say the images you sent me just are just beautiful, by the way. People should look at your new work because I think it's really fantastic. And so when I had seen your work in the past, you were working on a Jacquard loom, which you still are, right? Could you maybe describe that process of maybe a quick summary of from start to finish, how you arrive at a finished piece?
Sure. So weaving in general is a textile technique based on a grid. It involves a warp and a weft are the terminology for the X and Y axis, I guess, of that grid and the way the threads go vertically and horizontally. And there's different kinds of looms all over the world um, that allow for some form of like tension to hold the warp, the vertical threads tight so that the weft can go in and out of those threads. And a most looms can that either happens by hand or kind of there's some looms where there's foot pedals that are attached to wooden bars that lift whole rows of threads at the same time. And so you're able to push a couple different foot pedals and create more complex patterns that would take you many hours of trying to do each thread by hand. And then in the 1800s, there was a French inventor who basically came up with this idea of using a punch card with many different holes in it that then there would actually be multiple punch cards that would flip kind of each line. They would one card would hold basically the way that the threads would lift for that particular line in the textile. And so depending on how big the textile was, there was that many punch cards for each line of threads. And so that is called a Jacquard loom. It was named after the inventor. His last name was Jacquard. And somewhere in the 90s, a Norwegian and weaver wrote a proposal to her government to basically utilize some of the computerized Jacquard loom technology that is used in industrial mills where the punch cards are now replaced with computers and that data set is digital, but a lot of those are like massive factory machines that have a lot of limitations because things happen really rapidly and only certain types of threads are allowed because they don't want them to break and gunk up the machine. And but there's so she wanted to utilize the hand, like create some type of a loom that was a mixture of hand weaving techniques and the digital Jacquard technology. So I have that loom. It's called the TC2, the Thread Controller 2. And so it's kind of like the best of both worlds in my understanding of weaving and the use of technology because I start with designing the image that I want to weave on my computer. I kind of uh, uh, turned Photoshop into, I customized Photoshop to like I uploaded all these weave structures into the pattern overlay section and little things like that to allow me to use that as a tool for designing what would be eventually just a black and white TIFF file that then the Looms software understands of whether or not the thread lifts or stays down for each line of pixels, we should say. And so then I'm able to start the loom with that file and I push a foot pedal but I weave each weft yarn, each horizontal thread by hand rather than it being all automated like a factory. And so within that process, there is the delightful experience that artists love of the improvisation, and I can use unusual materials and maybe the the machine has no idea that I switched out the colors like different ways, or experimented with different things, or backed it up or switched it, reversed it. There's so many kind of creative things that can happen when the hand is involved. And so that's the part that I really enjoy about this process, that feels creative, and was why I was drawn to it on an as an artistic creation tool. But yeah, it also feels like for me this kind of interplay between something like a very ancient craft that is global and found in ancient burial sites. Humans have been weaving for since the dawn of humanity, and this, and yet also it's I'm engaging with our newest technological tool, this computer, and even the connection between the punch card and which was designed for this loom, was borrowed by another inventor to be used as a tabulation machine, which later became a computer. Um, so there's this interesting conversation about the evolution of technology and computation and memory storage, and also, all of the ways that that can be, uh, I guess, it can go wrong and glitched up.
It seems like you really thought a lot about this, and you've really thought a lot about the sort of levels of history and mediation. You start with a digital image, which is then fed to a digital loom, the Jacquard loom, right? And but all the while you're sort of using it in an analog by hand way, or at least the weave of it, right? Or the weft of it. Is that right? Am I saying that
Yeah,
right?
the weft
Yeah.
is the part that I mean, yeah.
The part that you have a hand in, so you can kind of alter it as you go. So really, it's a collaboration between you and this technology, but also with the technology throughout history.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's there's like a combination between precision um and also slowness, and the the things that computers kind of aid us in, but then also the ways that they complicate things. And so there seems like that the whole man and machine dialogue is kind of wrapped up in the process. And I find that really interesting. And in a way, it was part of the process even in some of the earliest looms, because it's essentially still a technology. And some of the oldest weavings in museums found in like various preserved burials that were on mummified bodies, or bodies that are, or sites that were frozen and preserved. Some of the weave structures on those particular like fragments of cloth are like incredibly complex architecturally, and so there's a technology even in the before a computer was involved
Oh,
of,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
it's ancient technology,
Right.
but it's still very sophisticated, and it's kind of I like that you're using computers, but it's still essentially very similar to the technology they were using pre-modern age.
Right.
So initially, how might you arrive at a design? Do you have something in your mind? Do you have something like how do you think? Is it something you're working on as a drawing first, or do you just do it all digitally and on the computer, and then how does that go forward?
Little combination of things. I feel like I was initially, my work kind of with this loom and this process kind of, it kind of began aesthetically with almost like a fascination with this process and looking at ancient textiles, but also thinking about the history of the connection between the loom and the computer, and looking at early integrated circuits that there was a plant for creation of integrated circuits early on at a Dene, or we would many people would know them as the Navajo Reservation, because they were working with weavers. Also, like the Apollo's mission to the moon, first mission to the moon was there were women who were skilled in textile crafts who were hired to hand construct the early memory core structures that ran a lot of that technology, because they were at that time, that was before I think RAM was invented, or other kinds of, before computer chips were like laser printed. They were actually made with copper wires and like hand woven. And so I was interested in this connection, and looking at a lot of imagery of hardware and things like that. So a lot of my early work kind of had this like reference to those as objects, and as uh, kind of aesthetic art pieces, where they were actually like kind of functional originally, just a functional tool. But I found that really beautiful. Or early computer boards and stuff where the solder lines were like hand soldered. And so it really is kind of like using um a like a glue gun or something, like a solder gun, because so there's even a gesture there. Someone's hand made that mark, and interested in particularly those pieces aesthetically. And so, so I would kind of be starting from these images, and then kind of using the computer, or um, Photoshop as my sketch pad. Sometimes I would scan in actual things that I did draw or sketch, but then the kind of editing process that could happen um, in a graphic way was really more focused on the computer for developing my designs. And then ultimately I had to use that to overlay what are called weave structures, which are basically like it's telling what is the pattern set of the way that the threads interlock. And by using this specific kind of loom, I can weave different weave structures within the same cloth. Most looms, you have to pick one, and the entire cloth is that structure. And because this loom, each thread lifts individually, I this exciting freedom happens. And so yeah, so that, I don't know if that's a little too techy.
I'm curious how the initial image. So I remember you making the works that you're describing that were based on computer chips. I'm picturing these sort of like structures that were more overtly digital. But I mean, it seems like it's very similar. Like I could definitely like see the connection between what you were doing in the past and what you're making now. But now I feel like you have maybe designs that perhaps come from your experiences in the shamanic world. And I wonder if you could talk about that and if that is true.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right with that assessment. The way I kind of see it, as maybe now I'm thinking shamanic experiences have involved plant technology. And so, and even some of my research in studying the history of textiles, which are some of the traditions that are still alive, carrying their ancestral traditions, come from South America, where these lineages are unbroken by colonialization. And there is um, always a connection to the plants. The dyes are from plants or from mud, and there is an understanding of the animals or the plant fibers in which the threads are derived from. And even in the Andes of Peru, where I've had a chance to study the style of loom is called a backstrap loom, which part of it is usually tied to a tree, and the other part is attached behind the waist, and you lean back against the tree, and that creates the tension for you to be able to weave. So you are literally weaving within the tree and the root's aura while you're creating your textile. And often many women would do this while they're taking their alpaca or their sheep or other animals to go graze. And so there's a deep connection to the earth and the land and the elements and the plants involved. And so those experiences, as I had more personal experiences studying some of these textile techniques and lineages, I've had like blessed opportunities to work many different groups in the mountains and in the jungle, also in Mexico and Guatemala with some ancestral techniques. I've also um, had some Scandinavian training as well. And that those experience also led me to, well, okay, well, what are these images about? Not only what are the plants and the materials and the processes, but what are these shapes that they're forming and what are the motifs about? And then that opens up to a spiritual cosmology and history and with some of the traditions that I've studied that involved shamanic plant medicines and spiritual studies. So that naturally led to my own investigation of many of those processes and and now I feel like, okay, well, that's just an extension of maybe these early technologies that I feel like this newer body of work is responding to, is this technology of the plants and the more of an earth-based kind of biological supercomputer of interconnection that all of a sudden is apparent in a different way. And so, yeah, this is where I'm like, okay, it's still there, like you said, but instead of only being a computer chip, I'm like, there's something much older here too that was as of the head, it keeps going. And that's kind of where I am in investigation now. Many of the pieces that I just recently shared with you, so many of them were in an exhibition that just closed that was in London, and a lot of those pieces were inspired by many of the plants that I've worked with or dieted in some of my shamanic study. And then now the show that I'm working at for Texas is more like, ooh, what were the plants from from the native of the land where I grew up in my childhood. And so actually I'm weaving the piece on the loom right behind me right now is a giant peyote
Mm.
cactus. So yeah.
Can sense the depth at which you've explored all these things, the materials themselves, the technology of the plants, and I see the way in which your work has evolved. The subject and the substrate are both meshed together very nicely. You know, the content, the material is the content. I feel like you have this complete, this practice where you're really looking at every nuance, every detail of the practice. But stepping back from that, they're just pleasant to look at, so that they're just beautiful objects as well, which I think is really important because then you're inviting people to look at it more closely and maybe question what the material is, what the ideas are, and it's just it's cool to see you evolve like this. So you've had a lot of experience with plant medicines, and in what subtle or perhaps more obvious ways have they had an impact on your work and your life?
Hmm. Wow. I mean, plant medicines have been absolutely life-changing for me. I feel like my first experience, you know, I feel like it kind of I think ayahuasca was kind of like the first medicine that came to me in a really strong, powerful way. And it came at a time when I was going through a lot of life rupture and change, a divorce, and all of the soul questioning things that come along with big life changes. And I felt that the medicine was just that. It was a medicine. It was a support. It was a stripping away of things that were unhealthy habits or belief systems or things that were getting in my own way of myself, the way that I was getting in my own way, and or things that were, um, you know, creating habits, whether they were even ancestral, that were creating habits and decisions that were leading me down almost like an automatic pathway that wasn't necessarily for my highest good. And the ceremonial experiences with ayahuasca and having I feel like the within she really came for me. Like I feel like the first year I met that beautiful plant spirit, I found myself going to Peru like 4 times within the next 2 years and
I
and
remember
had
you
some
went pretty
and
hard, huh?
really deep
Yeah.
experiences. Yeah, and it just was like I feel like there was some past, like I had like, oh, I didn't even believe in past lives before I had started this path, and all of a sudden I feel like I saw myself in the forest already, and that it was like, oh, I have a prior relationship with this plant that existed in another life, and it was just kind of like, oh yeah, well you cleared some karma that was part of the deal before we could meet again. And it was like, oh, you cleared some contracts, old contract, and now we're back. And it was just what? And a lot of really magical synchronicities happens. I feel like music came into my life and sound healing, which I feel like I'd always enjoyed music, and I'm an artist, so definitely have a creative um kind of understanding of how things work, but had never really explored singing or instruments myself. And all of a sudden, those things just like I feel like that world just like unlocked, and this beautiful so many beautiful things came um that are amazing, because I feel like carrying songs or something as simple as a drum or a mantra is your own medicine that you carry for yourself when you are in the midst of something challenging. You can my one of my main spiritual teachers talks about like the drum is your heartbeat, and if you can always just go and like bang on it and find and almost like recalibrate yourself, even if there is no, actual song or musical element behind it. However, even more if you have something like that that then directs your mind and brings you back to your own centering, and and it's like, nervous system regulation. And there's a reason why many of these instruments are also ancient to humanity too. And yeah, so I feel like how that has now those those experiences, then of course I feel like they've slowly been integrating into my work, little bit by little bit, but now I feel like it's very evident because I'm kind of rounding out on maybe almost a decade working with plant medicines. And so we have a different kind of relationship, a more mature relationship together now. And um, I've also had the honor of doing several diets with some other master teacher plants that, some of them have opened up creative channels, and that's what they do, and others were more fortifying and have other gifts that they bring, or ways that they come alongside your life to either help you personally, well, usually both, and be of service to others. But yeah, so I feel like there's that. And then recently, the I've been almost creating work as homage to them because it's like, wow, my life is so drastically different, and I feel like I'm on an different vibrational frequency, and like the fact that I was just able to navigate. I was so grateful for those plants. The fact that I was just able to navigate the horrible experience of the trauma of seeing, my hometown devastated, and dear friends losing their lives, and other people losing their homes, and all kinds of things, but to like still have see it all, but also allow those experiences to wash through me, let the grief wash out, but not let it collapse me. And I'm really grateful that for plant medicines that kind of have given me that in one of the lineages that I study and from Brazil, they call it firmeza in Portuguese, the firmness, but really it's kind of like this like fortitude that that you have something holding your spine in the midst of when everything, the ground is shaking around you, you can always come back to that place of centeredness that is within. And that's all that you, in the end, that's all you can control. You can't control everything else. And that I feel like is one of the beautiful things that these medicines have. I can see very strongly as of just recently, like, wow, I would not have handled that such what I've just experienced in this way, several years ago. And I'm so grateful for the plants for bringing that for mesa and fortitude.
So what plant specifically were you dieting with?
So, Bobenzana has been a beautiful um, teacher ally, which is from the mimosa family. Um, I had a really deep diet experience with her, um, like in a really deep part of the Amazon rainforest of Peru that was kind of, I feel like there's like the suburb Amazon, and then there's like the deep Amazon. There's like um it was, and I had been to the suburb parts of the Amazon thinking that was the Amazon a couple times and done retreats there where, I could wear like a sundress and walk around barefoot in the little malogas and have experiences that were still really rich and powerful. But deep in the Amazon, the true kings of the forest are actually like the insect world, and it's just like mosquitoes and giant spiders and all kinds of jaguars and ocelots and all kinds of everything that wants to eat you, and it's quite a very powerful experience, just physically being in that part of the forest. But then so working with Bobenzana there, I feel like it's like going through a deep, powerful experience with a friend. You become like very close, And so I feel like I have a really strong relationship with her because of that. And I say her meaning for me, the spirit is very feminine of that plant. And I feel like opened so much heart chakra energy for me, healed a lot of things that I think were the wounds that, led me into destructive relationships or all kinds of things. And then she also is wildly creative. And I feel like I got so many, I feel like she gave me sometimes I just call this, I use this term for nothing. Oh, I just made it up, but I call them spiritual surgeries, I guess, where maybe in some type of a ceremonial experience, and then now sometimes I get them even outside of a ceremony, but um, where I feel like I'm having some type of like energetic surgery on my physical body, and I feel like she gave me surgeries on my vocal cords, which has allowed me to sing in a wider spectrum of notes and with like kind of like vocal like tremors and vibrations that I was not born with in this body. And I feel like, wow, what a creative gift. And then to be able to play musically with like it's like she turned me into an instrument, and that's what a what a gift. And one of the other uh beautiful plants that I dieted, ahosacha, is a it's kind of like it's like a root, and they call it like the garlic of the Amazon, and it comes with all these like fortifying and immunity. I actually used it a lot during the COVID kind of situation, lockdown, while when I was here in New York City, and it's I feel like it's like one of the best like plant remedies for any type of cold flu type physical illness. Kind of in a sense, like garlic is like really good for for those types of things too. But the spirit behind it of that plant is also does those types of things. And I feel like I had some really strong physical healings with that plant, and then it's also I feel like I can call on it when I'm either experiencing like a tickle in my throat or something, or I in now I've been helping serve in like helping other facilitators with various ceremonial situations, and I feel like that's one of the plants. If I get the message that someone has like a physical ailment, I can call in that plant, and that plant like knows what to do always,
Mm.
as far as um those types of healing things. And maybe one of the other ones that I feel like is like so special and magical is, and I feel like I've just scratched the surface with this plant because it's so powerful. It's this plant called Noya Rao, which is the in the Shipibo
The
Kanibo
tree,
language
right?
that flying tree.
Yeah.
It is what that Noya Rao means. And some people call it also the tree of light and the
I've heard of the
tree of
tree. Yes.
truth. Yeah, and it's some people say it's not even real anymore, and that the ones that are around that people call it are like are not the real original magical tree, that it's this mythical special exclusive tree that only reveals itself to chosen people, and in that to be able to find it in the forest, and its leaves have a bioluminescence that glow in the dark, and its its spirit is like just connected to like the astrals.
It seems like you've got like a really wide range of plants you've worked with and various types of medicines, and you really have a very wide spectrum of stuff that it seems like you can pull from for your personal life and for your creative life. And I think that's quite impressive. You and I sat together in a Dime group once, and I don't know if you still are involved with that, but
Mhm.
that's quite different from other sort of plant medicines and other forms. And a lot of people, it seems like, stick with one thing because it can get confusing. It seems like for a lot of people, but it seems like you're able to integrate all these various techniques and utilize them. How do you think that's helped you to have this wide range of techniques and various experiences?
Well, I think so. The Santo Daime actually came to me first. And I think that is because, well, I think it's because of several reasons. Um, but one of which is I grew up in a small town in Texas, and my father was an elder in a Christian church. And I grew up with a lot of Christian cosmology. And the somehow the Santo Daime with its kind of like integration of Catholicism and um and African uh like Far East uh connections of like Umbanda, Candomblé, and and then also the indigenous
Santo
way
Daime was started in
of the
Brazil, right?
Amazon. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Yes. Yes, in Acre, well, I think it's Jurewa was maybe the beginning of, but near it's kind of the main headquarter kind of community is in Acre, Brazil, in the Amazon, and it's really it's such a beautiful tradition, and I think I felt safe knowing that okay, I'm doing this crazy thing. The maybe witchcraft is involved or whatever in plant medicines. That was my lack of understanding. And but at least Jesus is there and the angels, so I felt safer. And
It was familiar in a way.
yeah, so there was a familiarity to the cosmology that I already had. And and that I think that's actually where it stands in a beautiful place in many levels because it's a great uh lineage for healing. I think wounds that have kind of come from Christianity as dogma and kind of structures within that, and then also it it has because of the structure, which some people kind of have an aversion to its style because of the structure. I feel like the structure is a great protector. Like for one, it's legal in the United States because it's seen as a religion. And so the Santo Daime is protecting the medicine of the forest by its structure and allowing it to reach places in the world that um in legal ways, it has more difficulty reaching because of that. So there's like an interesting element. Also, um, because of the way that the structure is, there's there's a protection of the way that the medicine is created versus. So I've also studied a lot with the Shipibo, Kanibo lineage and some maestros there. And then I have another teacher that's part of um an inner tribal, I would say, ceremonial lineage, and but more in the shamanic side. But the Santo Daime, because of this structure, the medicine has to be made the same way each time. And there is kind of these recipes that were like downloaded by the founders. And there's kind of a strong one and a lighter one for the dancing style works, and then one for the sitting style works. Um, there's more complexities than that too. But the because of the way that and certain hymns are sung while and in unison while the men are like pounding the ayahuasca vine into shreds for it to be put in the pot to be brewed, and then the women are singing the same hymns simultaneously while they're cleaning the chacruna leaves. And so the hymns are being in integrated into the plants during the preparation process, and they're doing it as a community. So it's not like some shaman off in the forest by himself drinking a beer while he's stirring the pot and throwing in who knows what else of the other magical plants that exist in the forest that could create a little bit more of a sorcery experience or a witchcraft experience to somebody's medicine. which does happen quite frequently, actually. And so the Santo Daime medicine is incredibly pure, incredibly hydration, and you know what you're going to get when you get it because of this structure. And so again, there's like a safety element to that lineage that I think is really beautiful. And then I absolutely love the music. It's like this combination of like angelic choir and the beautiful lyrical musical kind of tonality of Portuguese as a language, which is there's a reason why most jazz singers sing in Portuguese because of the same like resonance of the vibrations within the mouth and the throat and the nose of this language. And then of course like the Brazilian guitar and its influence and connection of the drumming from Africa. All of a sudden all those things kind of stirred together create just like a really powerful musical experience
It seems also
that
like
just
it's
carried me away. Yeah.
yeah, no, and I appreciate you bringing me the one time, and I kind of I felt like it was really a feat of endurance in the way that you're participating. Everybody participates in it, and everybody carries it, and I'm just and a friend of mine came with us. He's like, I'm never doing that again, and I was like, yeah, might not ever do that again either. But I still got something really, it was really useful in that way. In that often you go to a ceremony and you're more passive. I'm not saying one's better than the other at all. I'm just saying that it seemed to have a lot of utility in that in your life. I sort of equate it to like doing a Vipassana retreat, a 10-day silent meditation, sitting the retreat versus serving the retreat. So I've served retreats that it's a little more accurate to life where you're doing you're cooking, you're talking to people, and there's social stuff going on. You're interacting, you're living in that way, and then you're going to meditate. So rarely are you in a bubble like that where you can like you. Of course, you're not going to go as deep in some ways, but it's a little more practical. There are going to be times where it's not going to be fun in your life. Like every day, you're facing situations that are not ideal, but you have to just go through it and you have to be present for it. So I think in terms of just being present, it seemed very useful. But the whole thing, like, and I understand the structure of it. I understand why, I mean, why they have the structure. You have it's all what's going to happen. You have a certain you're working through this book of hymns, then it's time to do, stand, and then it's time to do the dance at the end or whatever, and all this stuff. And so I appreciate, and much like in your life, it's like you pretty often you pretty much know what your day is going to be like. So, but I get a sense that those experiences really shaped your practice and more traditional shamanic experiences, and you've worked in sound healing. Did your work in sound healing come directly as a result of your work with plant medicines?
100%. Yeah. I mean, like I shared, the energetic surgeries, like with my vocal cords, but also all of a sudden, one of my times in Peru with my main teacher, um, we we did like a month-long study with this amazing flute maker and sound healer in the Andes, Tito La Rosa, and flutes and the air and the wind and all the elements of that really came together. And then I've really been studying what's called the pontos, so which is like the drum rhythms within, starting off with the Santo Daime, and then now I'm studying more the Umban Daime, because the roots of these of the rhythms are actually calling in energies. Usually these energies are connected to elements. So there's a fire and the water and the wind and when you're wanting to call in, um when you're in, everyone's in a space and open with the medicine, calling in. to call in the winds, and there's like a time to call in the fire, and then there's a time to call in a smooth river, the gentle ocean, and that those experiences are actually like guiding you through kind of a healing process, and your cognition doesn't even have to know it, but you feel it because you're carried through that by the sound vibrations. And that actually is really the the important one of the most important aspects of any ceremony is the way that that music guides everybody, and it's like we're all on the spaceship together, and we're all being guided, like, oh, now we're in the crazy tornado part, and like now we're in the gentle, like, healing water part after we've just been blown open and healed. We kind of bringing it the gentle, you know, kind of pulling us back together, and the healing, or maybe that's the time that allows you to be able to cry when you didn't know there was something still in your body that is a deep sadness that you've been hanging on to, and the music allows for you to energetically release that through tears. You still don't even know what that thing was. Maybe it was from your great grandfather, and it's something that he experienced that you're carrying in your DNA that you don't need because it's blocking your you living your best life. And so by you walking through it and feeling it, and you're able to release it. And so music really has the power to do that. And I think visual art does too. And that's something, as artists, we can kind of relate to. There are some pieces that that have you know the fire and the force, and other things that have like a gentle allure or a calming effect on the eyes, or the energy of the person viewing it. And that's really where the the artist can kind of like imbue, if you can imbue that into something, for somebody to just receive that when you're not even around, and they just walk up to the piece, they receive that out of it, then you've really like put that medicine energy into the work. And that's really where I am now with my weaving process, where I've been thinking like, how do I put the same energy that I can put into the ceremonial holding space or the music, um, how do I put that into these physical objects? How do I make a sacred object? And there's actually many, lineages that talk about this. I've had the amazing honor experience of making my own drum in a traditional Native American way, which is a ceremony, and also making some other sacred tools, including, like a feather fan that's used for limpia, like healing, cleansing, but also blessings. And the it's a craft because you're making a physical object, but it's also created within the context of a ceremony. And so that I feel like I wanted to utilize that process, that way of making, into my current new bodies of work, where I open the space in the same way I would in or I have was instructed to in some of these um making of a ceremonial tool, and then close it when you complete it. And I was told by actually like a Zen monk to also thank it before, thank the object that you just made for all that it's taught you when you were creating it. And then it exists beyond you, because it was created. You were basically you you opened the space, and you helped create the space for spirit. You invited a space where spirit could collaborate with you in the making. And I feel like maybe artists would often just say this is like flow state, that many of us find and that you bliss in when you're like in the flow and you're making it. It's beautiful and you don't even know why you painted that stroke or did something, but that was the move and that made the piece. So I feel like, there's something in all artists that are kind of doing this already. But I've also been more intentional and then I've been doing things like doing mantras or singing sacred songs while I'm weaving because there's certainly a labor intensive aspect to the work that I make. And I'm like, well, might as well imbue this object with these things. And then at the same time, I'm studying these hymn books of the Santo Daime or these other lineages, the various music and things that then I utilize in ceremony. So it's also a study for me. There's a time when those, I know you had commented about the Santo Daime being like an endurance thing. I think also maybe I'm just like my whole process is an endurance. Like I'm a weaver, like there's something about me that maybe enjoys that. But then it's like within it, it seems maybe have found this in your experience with the meditation, where in the first time, so it was so challenging. And then somehow the muscles build, the spiritual or mental or energetic muscles start to build. And the next few times it's not as challenging in the same ways. Maybe a new like layer opens that is the thing that you are challenged by. And I feel like for me, the for instance, like often in the Santo Daime, like the hymns, once I know the songs, they're not the barrier anymore. It's like maybe doing a mantra over and over. The first time you're stumbling over Sanskrit or something and your pronunciation's off, and that's all you can focus on because you're you're used to speaking a different language and your mouth doesn't move, your tongue doesn't, lips don't work in that same way. But once that technique has been kind of integrated into your muscle memory, I sent, then you can start the other things behind it can begin to open. And I feel like that's also the same thing for maybe any type of labor intensive making process, like for me, the first time making a weaving was so hard and complicated and it's easy to make mistakes and then but once you start learning the things, now I can weave. I still have to have a little bit of a focus while I'm weaving to not make big mistakes, but I can also go to a meditative place while I'm making because my hand-eye coordination has been trained to use this style loom and these techniques, and I have many years under my belt using them. And so there's like the point where the discipline becomes the dance, you know? And I think that happens in perhaps, you know, all kinds of things, but specifically in a creative and a spiritual context. That's to me that's the most like blissful place where you can find yourself there. And that's almost like when you touch some type of consciousness experience, or at least in some of my um, experiences, that's what's happened.
Would you say there's a morality in your work?
Morality?
Yes. When
Hmm.
you make work, do you think it's imperative to make something that uplifts somebody, or there's a chance that it could have a positive impact in their life? I'm asking this because you were describing the sort of the process of when you sort of put this intention into making a piece, that it could have an impact on somebody else's life independent of you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I
Not
would choose the
independent
word
of you, but
morality. I would choose
when you're
maybe the
not
word
there.
energetic. yeah, I would choose maybe the word energetic. I think like um I think if it's being imbued in some type of sacred process, then there I allowed the space for something and an energetic vibration. Maybe it's spiritual, maybe it's, there's so many cosmologies and ways to wrap our heads around what that is. And viewers are going to come from so many different places in that. But if there's an energy there, then I would imagine it's going to be received. And then it's I'm not limiting it with whatever my personal cosmology is, which you know could be evolving too constantly. And but then, I do think like I personally have been trying to practice through my disciplines and trainings what I would maybe call like a presence of peace and harmony in my life. And to try to, it's like that phrase that I talked about before, the centeredness, where even if everything around me is not so good, at least I can go there. And I've cultivated that inner space to where, you know, I ultimately, if maybe life is some type of virtual reality and all that exists really is just what's within anyways. And so that's all that really matters. And so I think if that's morality, then yes, the idea of creating peace or a space of peace, and I'm trying to hold that within myself when I'm making it, and many of the maybe the hymns or other mantras or things that I'm reciting or practicing when I'm creating the work, um they have energetics of maybe, you know, someone will feel that even if they don't know it, because those things are powerful. And they yeah, it's like I'm just kind of like allowing them to be in there. and, and then
Yeah.
wherever they want to communicate, or even if someone has the openness to feel it, or then they're there if to find, and so yeah, I think, and I feel like maybe that's something that I wasn't doing in my earlier computer work, which was darker, and I was kind of thinking like the ghost in the machine, and but there was still kind of like the finding of the what is this, you know, maybe kind of the consciousness that is the echo of the humanity behind the digital, something like that, the that we're now even seeing at another level with AI
Oh
and its
yeah.
growing prominence. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think maybe it was always kind of a little bit, but now you know yeah, rather than just being like me feeling in the murky darkness, I'm I'm like, okay, hey, there's these ancient, you know, mantras or just vibrational frequencies of attuned singing bowl or that create a vibrational space that is on a plane for um an emotional experience that would be in that vibration, which usually what things that might be considered moral or a desired experience like love or peace or harmony would be on a vibrational scale on a higher vibration than maybe like anger or things. But now I've been thinking a lot about like grief and what is that vibration, and propping the richness of of those emotions, because that's part of healing, and healing is feeling the unpleasant things that need to get felt, and rather than only living in like, oh, a light and love type of um what do they call, like spiritual bypassing is the term. um Kind of in a lot of the, new age world, where it kind of excuses away some of the realities, because you want to just keep yourself so vibrationally high or whatever, that you're actually maybe doing more damage by not allowing yourself to have the human experience, which includes the duality of the high highs and the low lows. And one of the plants actually that showed me this um, is one of the tallest trees in the Amazon rainforest, and sadly they're very endangered because they're hardwood, and loggers are like, yeah, okay, we might as well choose that one. We get like 5 times more with one tree of wood than all these others. But in the Shipibo lineage, they call it La Lapunya. Um, the Blanco, there's actually like, I think a red and a black one too, but the white one, um, it's a guardian spirit of the rainforest. Supposedly there's like a trickster energy connected to it too. But I was working with that plant, that tree, and I was like, oh wow, what's it gonna show me? Like the highest height, the highest, flying tree in the forest. And I feel like in the ceremony, I went to this all the way to the t top, above the canopy, but it was there for like a second. And then I plummeted down to equal depth below the earth. And then it showed me that's where its roots were. And it was like, you can't be that tall, that high without this root being this deep. And that has to happen first. And I was like, whoa, what a deep teaching of the lows, and feeling the depths is actually the only way for to type of energetic heights. And I've had, other spiritual teachers talk about the the existence on this planet being about bringing the energy down from the heavens into the earth, into its core, all the way to the depth, and holding it there, because the energy needs to be on the planet of that, rather than us just trying to be love and light and be in this high vibrational place that's perhaps ungrounded. And and um and I feel like often other things get mixed into that too, egos and things. But it's really the groundedness that is where the work is too. And that's actually what allows your the strength of this kind of, I feel like it's like, I often visualize like it's like a pillar, like this tree inside my spine, kind of like of that core centeredness, and being grounded deeply, like rooted is really the the important part. So I don't know, I went on a lot of tangent there, Simone.
No, I think a lot of people, I think the
Hopefully
thing
it made
is that
sense.
no, it did make a lot of sense. And I think there's a danger of being aloof on a spiritual level or getting on a very high plane, and then but you don't want to interact with people because they could bring you down, So I think that's a big piece of it too. Do you know Pima Chodron, the author? She was a
Yes. I mean,
Chogyam Trungpa's, you've read her work, I'm sure. But in the book When Things Fall Apart, she talks about how it's not you're not ascending the mountain, you're not going up the mountain, you're not trying to get away from people and going up the mountain and escaping in that way on your spiritual path. You're actually going down and meeting people where they are. And I think that's a really important piece of any spiritual or any personal work, any worthwhile endeavor on a on that level. It seems to engage with people and engage with your own life. We're humans, right? As nice as it is to float around on an astral plane, you still there's a lot to be learned here.
Yeah. And we chose to be incarnated in these like flesh bodies for a reason in a two-dimensional, or three-dimensional, I was meaning like the duality plane of this three-dimensional space. And on this planet specifically, so there is yeah, there's a purpose for that. And to just kind of like try to, I feel like many either, I don't know, the danger of too much plant medicine in not a grounded way, or even many spiritual traditions. It could be just meditation is to just escape the body, escape the world, and instead of feeling it and being in it and being present for it, which is actually like, the whole, you know, reason why we're here. So yeah, that's often been, but then, that's the challenge. That's like, I kind of feel like the Earth School is like, this one's like, you know, tough one.
Traditionally in Buddhism, it's seen as one of the most advantageous, auspicious realms you could be in for that reason, because anything is possible. There's a lot of possibility for understanding, for learning, because it is difficult. It's not so hard. It's not so difficult that all you're doing is suffering, and it's not so pleasurable that you wouldn't even think that there's something else, that there's another way to live. So that it seems like it has quite a balance of pleasure and pain, enough that I think there's a lot of growth that can happen here.
Yeah, that allows for the transmutation. It allows for the the lesson to be gleaned from the painful experience, or the diamond to be, sharp formed through the challenge that and also the physical sensations of the body, and those um the the fact that you can't have the elated joy of the physical body unless you also accept the like deep physical pain. And so that those two don't one doesn't exist without the other. You have to have both for there to be that understanding. Um, I in my studies recently with the tradition of Umbandaimi, which it has the roots a little bit more of the African aspect of the Umbanda, and the everything begins actually with this, I don't know if essence, perhaps, maybe, like deity is not even the right word. It's like an energy that is referred to as the Eshu, which is like the nothing. And always this energy must be acknowledged first before you can acknowledge anybody else, because before there could be, like, the instant before creation happened, there had to be the nothingness space for the creation to happen. And this is really like cracked open my, cosmology of perhaps my Christian upbringing, that there was like the black and the white and the dark and the light and the evil and the good. And all of a sudden, the realizing of, oh, wait, for the good to exist, there also has to be the opposite side of the moon, like both, for one to be, there is the other. And then it is all actually ultimately it's all ultimately love, because it's all part of the invention, the creation of the realm for conscious evolution to grow within the knowledge and understanding of maybe what is good or bad, or beneficial or detrimental to oneself or others. But without that, you wouldn't even be able to experience that knowledge of it. And yeah, I found this to be quite special because I have a new relationship with uh my understanding of what I might have seen before as dark or things that I would have been you know
Yeah,
yeah,
it's all figure and ground, right?
right, exactly. Yeah, to bring it back to
You can't have up if you
the
don't have down, right?
exactly. Yeah, you
Yeah.
need both to create it. Otherwise there's not. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, Robin, it's been really wonderful chatting. Thank you so much for meeting. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
Well, I'm grateful to be here too, and I've listened to several of these podcasts, and I really enjoyed what you're doing and seeing you on your journey of evolution creatively and kind of energetically, and that's always been like a joy to see. And I don't know, maybe I can plug my upcoming art things.
Please. Yes.
Um, Let's see. So I'm going to be in a group show at the Pit, LA, this August. It's called High Dose, and I'm actually showing a weaving inspired by a sunset that I saw in the Amazon on my dieta with Bobenzana when I was like covered in mosquito bites, and I put all this mud by the riverbank on my on them to try to just like pull out the swelling and just like suffer a little less. And then I got this like light show of the most incredible sunset that I had ever experienced on the bank of the river and just covered in mud and watched a flock of macaws fly by and cried and was just like, wow. Mixture of pleasure and pain for sure. So that piece is going to be in that show, and then I'll be at the Austin Public Library opening September 26th. That show is called The Light That Grows Here, and that'll be there's also going to be a sound bath at the library, kind of in honor of uh, everything that the Texas Hill Country has been through recently with the floods. So we're gonna
Will
have
you be
like a
doing the sound bath?
will be,
Cool.
yes.
Cool. That's great. Well, amazing. Thank you for that. And good luck with all these upcoming projects. People should definitely check those out and check your work out. And thank you again.